do whatever I do really well. You can hear me? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Very clear.
Yeah. So this small self to the big self, it has intrigued me. It has intrigued everyone who has gone to through spiritual and such literature, that a traditional or conventional use of the small s in the self indicates the individual spirit or Atma. And when we move over to the capital S, when the S is big, it denotes the universal or Paramatma or whatever you call God. It's a useful device, though very confusing initially when I went through it because I would mistake one for the other. Also, it is confusing or the confusion gets confounded when people move from one to the other without understanding the path between the two. They think, yeah, I have achieved something, or they think there's a lot to achieve, and things like that. So there are three things here: the small self, that is the individual, the big self, that is the universal, and the path between the two. This gives me the handle to talk today. In the sense, we'll be discussing all these three, the problems, the good things associated with it, and what practically we need to do. To begin, the small self is an accepted entity in religious, theosophical, spiritual, and all those thinking. It's a concept. It is seen as the essence of the individual. Rarely people debate it, but in intellectual circles they do. And recently I was surprised in a social service group. They said, Doctor, please don't talk of the self or the soul because it's something which we can't grasp. So, and these are people doing social service. I was surprised. Anyway, this small self is considered the extension of the big self or the universal soul, Paramatma or God, into the individual's body and mind. So, as an individual, we are familiar, like the social service group told me, that we are familiar with the body, we are familiar with the mind. So, let's talk about it. Now, this individual soul or the small self is supposed to be an extension of the big self into this. This is expressed clearly in Indian philosophical thought as the Sthula Sharira, that is the gross body of physical body which we have, the Sukshma Sharira, which is the mind, and the Karana Sharira, which is the soul or what we consider as the extension of the universal soul into the individual. Some philosophies do not accept the Karana Sharira as the Atma or soul. They say that its purpose is only Karana or causation. It generates the mind and body. As we are aware, spiritual, religious, and such thinking is a top down affair. It is not the bottom up affair of science. Science believes the body comes first, then the mind, and then whatever beyond that. While philosophical and other thinking says that the soul comes first, then from which the mind is generated and the body. So here, Karana Sharira is taken as the originator of the mind and body, and just that. It is that aspect which migrates from birth to birth. In Indian and Indic philosophies, Indian, that is Hindu, Buddhist, Jain, and so on, we believe that the soul or Atma migrates from birth to birth, and this Karana Sharira is the one which collects all the backlog from the previous janmas and transmits it or carries it over to the next ones. It is like a wheel. It is between the actual soul, which is an extension of the big one, and the body and mind. This means if we have to cross over from the small self to the big self, we need to handle the gross body, the subtle mind, and also the causative Karana Sharira in our journey. This has been well recognized, and in yoga, for example, it tackles all these aspects through the Ashtanga or its 8 limbs. Buddhism tackles it through the Four Noble Truths that unfold an eightfold path, and so on. Like each one recognizes the body, the mind, and what goes beyond, and connects them in their philosophies and in their paths. But when we take all these things together, that means life. Practically, life for us means all of these things together. And so we have to consider the problems of each, the relationships between them, and what are the things which make it convenient for us to go from the small to the big cell. They become important because there are other life forms other than the human form which also influences, and there are other non-life forms which influence our gross, subtle, and karana shariras. For example, I use this example a lot. Is this a pen which I won't give it to you for whatever you are willing to give me? It's because my daughter gave it to me on my birthday. So the value of it is so much, but it's a non-living thing. We attach ourselves to that. So this whole spectrum of things complicate matters definitely. Anyway, we'll go on from the gross body. When we take the gross physical body, it has its own needs from the physical universe we inhabit. It needs its roti kapda makan, like the politicians say, and it is subject to genetics, that it is dependent on our parental lineage and the assets they have left us, physical or body assets. I mean, the BPs and the sugars and even piles and things like that, which we are subjected to, the genetic portion of our physical body, we inherit. Then there is the nurturing. We have got an asset of this physical body, which we nurture. We take care of, neglect, abuse, or use for our needs. So that has also an influence on the gross body. And then there are many choices we make. We make choices from minimalism to extreme luxury during the course of our life. And these influence whatever movement from the small to the big cell. In short, these are certain limitations. It is like in a card game, this is the hand we are dealt with. We have to play this game with all the whatever cards we have got, make the most of it. So disciplining of the body and taking good care of this, it's called the temple of the soul. So the soul, since it is supposed to reside here, this temple has to be taken care of and also prepared or disciplined for the journey. Now, how do we do it? We have various approaches. It ranges from austerities to fasting. I mean, in every religion, we have whatever Ekadashi, Dwadashi, and things like that. We have got Lent in Christianity or Ramzan among the Muslims. Fasting, exercising, not going to the gym, but keeping the body fit to do whatever work we do, and even exposure to extremes of climate and other things. ಅದನ್ನ ದಂಡಿಸಿದ್ರೇನೆ ಅದು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡೋದು ಅನ್ನೋ that sort of attitude is there. These are methods which are considered suitable to build up the structure of this temple. So each one advocates their own, and each of us follow whatever is convenient to us. The subtle mind, which is the middle person or the middle entity, exemplifies the middleman in any transaction, derives benefits from both sides, and influences both of them. We will get back to it after we see the other side, which is the causative body or the Karana Sharira. The causative body or Karana Sharira is the cause of the other two and carries the past as prarabdha, which is sorted out in the present life. As far as the Semitic religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, they believe that we have got only one chance, that is this life. And the incentives which are sort of promoted are heaven or hell for what we do here. While the Indic religions, the more ancient ones, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism, and so on, which are from the East, talk about reincarnation, which means you can go on and on. You make a mistake now, you got a chance to rectify it. And one of the reasons they say we get back to earth is because we have asked for rectification. We say, yeah, I made a mistake last time, so I want to correct it. And that forms the karma which we have to face in this world, in the present context. So, the reincarnation concept is though a slow moving thing, is a chance for us to bridge the gap through repeated learning. There's this joke about this. You know, why the woman wants to keep on with her husband for 7 janmas, 7 janma together. They say it is because whatever effort she has put in the first couple or more janmas, she doesn't want to lose out, because by third, fourth janma, if she marries a different man, she has to start from the beginning. So it's better to, modify that single chap from the beginning to the end. It's like that. This going through the incarnations or even one birth, the goal seems to be that the small individual self merges with the big universal self. That is one, or getting out of the repeated cycle of births and deaths, which is called moksha or liberation. Liberation is a term used in Christianity and the Judaic religions, but here we call it moksha. Coming to the subtle body or the mind, the main this thing which is in between the other two, or the middleman in this triad, we need a better understanding to be able to deal with it. Also, the relationships it sets up on either sides. It sets up a particular relationship with the body, another relationship with the soul, and influences both of them. The influence between the mind and body, they are mutual, in the sense the mind, it's not in a mood, it neglects or doesn't take care of the body so well. The body, when it is hurt or is having problems, influences the mood or the mind. So their influences being mutual and reciprocal, they are considered together sometimes as body-mind. Yoga and the physical disciplines like martial arts and these things start with the body. They say you discipline the body, make it perfect, make it a good tool, make this temple fit for whatever, and you can then tackle the mind. Similarly, the relationship between the mind and the Karana Sharira, effects are mutual. They carry the imprints of that which carries the imprints of the past lives, helps the mind to erase them or tackle whatever comes in the way of life and get rid of them. In the process, the mind also adds on new ones to them. The influence of the Karana Sharira is particularly in setting a direction for the mind. It tells it which way to go and provides the suitable contexts or circumstances. It is Shakti Gawai who says when the mind wants something, the universe conspires to help it. Now, what is the conspiracy of the universe? The conspiracy of the universe is just to get the mind to achieve its crossing over from the small to the big self. So it creates the circumstances, it creates whatever is needed, but the choice again, of course, lies with the mind. So this mind has also limitations. The relationships it sets up, the limitations are not only its own, it's also because of the Karana Sharira and the Sthula Sharira which we inherit. Now it's getting a bit heavy. So let us clarify with a contemporary example. We are struggling with the same sorts of problems in spite of all our developments as human beings. If we study robotics or artificial intelligence, we see that we have created machines that operate on programs. with a limited scope. And things like, the first early ones were in these washing machines, they advertised that it operates on fuzzy logic. You just put the soap and switch on the tap and put your clothes in, and it does everything. Fuzzy logic, it calculates how much clothes are there, what soap, this, that, and works it. Then we went into the ability of the machines to do online learning. As it's working, it learns, and it learns and modifies function on the job, so to say. But these are also limited. So when confronted with this situation, which is beyond the ability of the robots or whatever its programs are, what does it do? It just stops, or goes into dysfunctions or malfunctions. So what happens is the same in our case. Our programs, if they don't work, we go into dysfunction or malfunction or just stop functioning. I'll give an example, recent this thing, like what we have done with driverless cars. It's supposed to monitor everything on the road and what is coming, what is going, all that things, speed and things like that. And we are still struggling with the algorithms it needs. So what do? We change the algorithm. Similarly, our mind also keeps changing the algorithm if it is directed properly in the direction it is supposed to go. Also, with these limitations or new algorithms coming in, the implementation becomes better. Yet we have seen, like in government programs and all that, which are very good. Programs are well conceived, very good. But when it comes to implementation, it fails because while implementing, it involves human beings, and each of these human beings have their own way of thinking, have their own problems, have their own beliefs, and that obstructs anything. So same thing happens in our lives. Though all the circumstances and other things are created, we will end up in problems all over again. Now, we go a bit more deep into the mind, delve into the mind to get more clarity. The mind is the software operating in the hardware called the brain. This thinks, feels, and initiates actions through the body of an individual. The mind is a tool which thinks, feels, and initiates action. The thinking or intellect is what makes us human. It has helped us leave our nearest cousins, the chimpanzees and the apes and all that, far behind because we are able to store knowledge. We are able to tackle abstract concepts, a square plus b square or x square plus y square, and use language to store information. We also have got imagination to create our own future. This interfaces with the Karana Sharira or the soul, and it's also called the higher or conscious mind. The intellect is the conscious part of the mind and deals with the soul. The feelings or emotions in the mind are at a lower level. They are called the lower mind and they interface with the body. Emotions are expressed a lot in the body. When you feel angry, you can feel that shivering in your body. When you feel sad, you can see the collapse and so on. This is called the lower mind and it forms a large part of our unconscious mind. If you look at it, a large part of the mind, that's 90 to 99%, according to different perspectives, is running unconsciously. It is involved in running our body, like breathing, digestion, heart function, instinct for survival, among others, and is called the unconscious mind. Since it does not involve our conscious involvement at all. It goes on. What you ate in the afternoon is being digested by itself. You are breathing on your own and things like that. A large part of our learning is also handed over to the unconscious. A simple thing I'll tell you. It is a great feat for the child, infant, to be able to get up and walk. And this involves a lot of from balance to ability to gauge distances, this, that, and all. Now, walking is a very ordinary thing unless we are so aged or with problems that walking again becomes a difficult issue. But this simple thing, not just walking, driving, eating, drinking, writing. Reading, writing, well, the 3 R's they say, and arithmetic. These are all very simple things we think, but it has been consciously learned and it involved a lot of effort learning and then transferred to the unconscious mind. It becomes unconscious. Here, let us try an experiment. You'll understand it much better. You multiply 2 by 2, 2 into 2. What is it? Simple. An unconscious answer comes 4. Again, what is 12 into 12? 12 multiplied by 12. You see again unconsciously that, yeah, it's so simple. But when I ask you to multiply 2736 with 1198, I've got you there. Because it becomes a conscious effort, which means the simpler or the specific things which are regular are handed over to the unconscious mind, and the conscious mind comes into play when something is more complicated. So what happens when we talk about intellect and we talk about Karana Sharira and all that, we need to use the conscious mind, which takes us into such realms where we have to be very aware of what's going on. Yet the unconscious mind up to 99% dominates. So this thinking, feeling, and outcomes of our actions are called experience. ಏನು ಅನುಭವ ಆಯಿತು? You went to Himalayas, what was your experience? It's what you thought, what you felt, what you did. You went to that place, what was your anubhava? How was your experience in schooling or learning or college or in the meeting somebody and things like that? So this experience is a combination. The mind consolidates these things into an entity called the belief. Once you believe that the chair will hold your weight, so you're sitting down comfortably. Why you do that? Because the thinking, the feeling, and the action you generated shows that it happens. So it has given you a belief. Unless one of the legs gives way and you fall down, then you will check each time. So these beliefs are things in the mind which function automatically. They are in the unconscious mind. And the set of these beliefs, which is involved with our survival and protection of the individual, get together to form the ego. This is the core of the small self. Oh, after a long talk, we have meandered onto the small self. The small self is there. The essence is the ego, which consists of protective and beliefs which are involved with our survival. And they come from experience, ours or others, and so on and so forth. So having come to the small self, let's just summarize what we learned. The small self is a concrete entity, not an abstract thing. It is with physical, mental, and even social dimensions, because all of them influence us, that are amenable to the senses in our physical body or within the understanding of the mind. There's behavioral sciences, psychiatry, psychology, and all these are outcomes of this understanding. By the way, here I wanted to share that the word psychology, psyche means soul actually. Psychology is supposed to be the study of the soul, but what we study is the mind, or at least that part which interfaces with the Karana Sharira. Now, transpersonal psychology is a new discipline which goes beyond the individual mind to the group mind or the social mind, or beyond that into spirituality. The capital self, on the other hand, this is a small self ruled by the ego. The capital self, on the other hand, is an abstract entity. It is not come into the concrete hold like we have got a hold on the small self. It's an abstract entity. It is speculative and beyond the capabilities of the mind in terms of its grasp or ability to express so-called spiritual experience. People say that, I remember one of my friends was talking about on Banda divine light, because that man used to see a divine light wherever he went. So they thought it was a big joke. But we don't know. He might have been experiencing that. It is the home we sense, this Gharvapsi business, we feel that we have come from somewhere there and we need to go back there. That is the big self, that we need to return. It is an experience which people have experienced either at near death or this or that, where the joy which they experience is something they would like to re-experience. It is the ultimate goal of life as far as spirituality, religion, and all these things are concerned. And it's an evolutionary pull. So, though it is abstract, we have a lot of measures for it. It is the home we sense, which we have to get back to. It is the greater experience we crave for. It is the ultimate goal we work for, and it's an evolutionary pull. Here, I would like to, one of these stories which come, it seems the Shishya went to the guru, spiritual guru, and asked him, he says, every night, middle of the night, when I get up, my wife has turned to the other side and there is a light around her head and it is like a halo. So can you explain to me how this happens? So the guru, being a very practical man, told him, it's nothing. It is your wife checking your cell phone. That's all. So, and she has turned that side because she doesn't want you to see it. And since she has turned, the light of the cell phone is causing all that halo around her head. So it's like that. We get into a lot of confusion and mistakes when we become very practical. At the same time, there is such an entity, is our feeling, experience, and so on. I would like to hold on a little bit here and ask any of the participants if they would like to share any of the so-called spiritual experiences they feel they have come across or they have heard about, or which has influenced them to understand this bigger self. Vani or Vasu, anyone, you can either chat, raise your hand, or do something like that.
Yes.
Which will,
you can type on the chat and I can read it out.
Yeah.
Or you can unmute and ask. Or you can
Yeah.
raise your hand and then you can unmute and ask. Anybody?
I think they were deeply involved in whatever was going on. You have to think a little bit. If there's nobody, I'll continue. We will get back to any inputs from participants again. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Huh?
I think we can do that.
Yeah. There is a story of the guru in the Himalayas who used to evaluate. He was very well known for evaluating spiritual experiences. So when anyone had a spiritual experience, they would go to him, climb the Himalayas, go to him and tell him what it is. And his answer was always very simple. Neti, neti. It is not that, it is not that. Because anything of that nature, which belongs to the universal mind or God or things like that, cannot be explained, that experience is very difficult to even share. You have to bring it down to very mundane levels to do that. And when you do that, the essence is lost. So his answer was neti, neti. So the aspirant went back, used to come back again with another experience, and again the story was neti, neti. Till either that fellow got enlightened and realized that these are experiences which you can't really share or tell people about because it is more than the physical and mental, which means he got enlightened and he left the place. Or the second thing is that he gave up on this whole enterprise. Janki Raman, I think, is on.
Yeah, I wanted to ask because earlier I was unable to unmute.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dr. Thakur.
Yeah,
Oh, no, my clarification, or I would say sharing, is most people have got something like synchronicity or
Yeah.
something which is inexplicable. something like a miracle which happens. Is it just the mind, or it is some higher self acting or divinity helping you? And how do we really discriminate or distinguish
Yeah.
higher self acting and causing certain situations which are like you yourself said, miraculous escape and
Yeah. Yeah.
in the accident. So what really happens?
Okay,
Synchronicity, particularly.
I'll explain it this way. One of the functions which I said earlier of the higher self, or the self with the big S or the capital S, is providing direction for the crossing over from lower self to, from small self to big. It provides the direction and it creates the circumstances to do it. So it is like this. If you are making a mistake, like in class, the child is making the mistake, the teacher first explains that this is not so, you do it this way. 5 plus 3 is 5 in the mind, 3 in the hand, and so on and so forth. Still the child makes a mistake. Then they try putting 5 apples and 3 oranges, whatever. And various ways of teaching are done till the teacher gets fed up and finally hits the child one this thing with the scale or with the hand, and the child straightens out and learns. So similarly, our life experience is we are given these cues or clues from the higher self providing direction for our life. And when we do not change our plans or whatever, and we are deviating from the course which we are supposed to be in, some such thing happens. A calamity, a disaster, something happens, and you are rescued out of it as a miracle to again pursue a changed path. So, whatever your path, you are brought back on that and you are left on it to continue. So, this is how miracles happen. It is an experience which wouldn't have happened otherwise unless you had to be on earth. You know, this, who is that person? I forget his name. He talks about if there's a simple test to know if your work on earth is over. If you are alive, it is not. So, as long as you are alive, you have got something to do to cross over. So, when we do such a thing or go through a miracle, what is happening is our course correction is happening. Just now I got a question from Mr. Alur that what is this miracle or accident or such thing? Is it related to Sthula and Sthula Sharira? As you see, we are the tools which we have got are this Sthula and Sukshma
Sukshma.
Sharira. So they have to be initiated to go in the right direction. So how can it do? Because the Karana Sharira is the one which carries all this. Through that, the higher soul or the universal soul acts and pushes you or creates that circumstances for you to understand. Still, sometimes we are so stupid we don't understand because we have got our own ego and such things. I'll be coming to that a little bit later. So it is like this. We are directed. We may follow the directions or we may not. Now, if you look at religion, which is the side which re ligare, which means which ties the soul back to the body and mind. Re ligare, religion, the word is derived from that. It is opposed to science because most of the time there's nothing logical, there's nothing, it depends on unconditional beliefs. All our minds operate on conditioned beliefs. Okay, if I try to step off the ladder, I'll fall on the ground. Yeah, that is true. That's logical. But this one doesn't work that way. Recently, it was surprising. All of you might have read in the papers that parents in Andhra Pradesh killed two of their, and these are educated parents. They were really well off and things like that. Killed two of their children, two girls, one doing MBA and one doing something else, because of this irrational beliefs, because of faith. And when they were confronted or asked by the police came there, they wanted some more time to revive the children. They said they'll live again. Now, That is the power of unconditional beliefs. People get into that. Many of these, what you would call sects and these things which go the wrong way. So people are very wary about it nowadays. But religion or religare or tying back depends on that because the mind really does not know. The gap between the small self and the big self is very large, is magnified by all these physical, mental, and social circumstances and the relationships and understanding, the complexities between them. Yet we have got examples of people who have bridged these gaps. They are called saints, they are called Mahatmas, they are called enlightened beings, and so on. Well, that is life. So let us now consider the mechanisms through which this bridging occurs. It seems like what I have discussed, rather not we, or you have listened to. A person went to God with this sort of knowledge. You can take it as me. And he was telling God, see, I tried this, I disciplined my body, I did yoga, I did this, I did that, and all. And my mind, I disciplined it, I put it in this direction of spirituality and so on. And when all these things were going on, God stopped him midway and said, see, don't say I, don't say mine, because nothing belongs to you. You know that body which you talked about, your body or your temple, or it's not yours. It belongs to the elements in the universe which I have created. They have come together to form your body temporarily and they disappear. Once you are cremated or buried, it goes away. So it's not you. It doesn't belong to you. As far as the mind goes, it's a part of the body, and when the body disappears with their death, it also disappears. So don't talk about this being yours. Then what about the soul? This soul is my extension into you. So what are you talking about yourself? This frustrated that individual who was on a spiritual path. So out of frustration, he asked God, okay, then tell me what could be mine. Which you say I have to bridge this gap. And if nothing belongs to me, then you do it. If you are not doing it, then I have to do it. So tell me what I have to do. So God's answer was very simple. I have given you the present moment for you to use. That's all you have got. If at all you can call it yours, because that is the one which bridges the gap between the small self and the big self. That is the one which connects to me. That is the one which connects everything in the universe. While your mind is looking at past, future, and things like that, it is that here and now, the present moment, which connects everything, and it is my present to you. Now, that is something, a very profound thing. And we have got the present moment, which is the only reality or truth. We are sadly unaware of this or unaware of this present. We have done the here and now exercise earlier in other things, so I won't be going through that again. Yet, later, if there is time, let us do it. Because that is the only contact between the universe, between the self, small self, and the big self. As we are talking about people who have achieved it, let us look at some more. So we have, well, look, A, B, C, D, E, F. I have written these things. A, the body mind is where we are with the mind dominating all relationships and life processes through a core group called the ego. So all religions, spirituality, everybody agree that you have to shake up the ego and get out of the connections which it has made. Dr. Wayne Dwyer, he summarizes 7 steps to overcome the ego's hold on us. They are very simple, most difficult to implement. He says, stop being offended by anything. That's the ego function. Let go of your need to win. There's no need to win. Let go of your need to be right. There's no need to be right. Let go of your need to be superior. Let go of your need to have more. Let go of identifying yourself on the basis of your achievements. Even let go of your reputation. So religion and spirituality tell us unequivocally, since ego has to be dropped for you to move to the capital self, you have to do it. Parthasarathi, who is a Chinmayananda Shishya who runs his own training centers, etc. in Pune, uses the analogy of the pole vaulter. He says the pole vault person carries the pole, long pole, that is the ego, and uses it to jump to that height, but he has to drop it before he can go over. If he doesn't drop it, he cannot go up. So ego is like that, like the pole vaulter's pole. Kanakadasa had famously said this. He told the king who had asked him about who could go to heaven, Nanu hodare hogabodu, which means if that I or that self goes, then I can go. So these tell us that the ego's hold can be removed and we need to be vigilant about it. Then the mind operates with images built from our five senses and the emotion we attach to it. These are strung into words. Human being is the only being that operates on language and with words. So these words, when they are strung together, form a narrative. In psychology, they call everyone has got a narrative. This is the image which we have about ourselves, and we laboriously work through it. The human being stores, conveys information through words, and all that from this personal narrative. Before going further, there is an oft-repeated statement from an eminent psychiatrist, Elvin Semrad, who cautions us. He says, the greatest sources of our suffering are the lies we tell ourselves. Our narratives are packed with lies. I am a very good person. I don't do any bad to anybody. I think right. I do this. I do that. Lot of lies we pack our narratives with, and we are the sufferers. So one is letting go of the hold of the ego. Second is looking at the narratives which are running our life. Self-awareness, which is the theme of this 7 days, starts when we recognize this narrative. How do you recognize this? There are recurrent patterns in the narrative because it has been synthesized by us. Even in dreams, we get it. You can reshape the mind as you look at your own narrative, and we question our hidden assumptions, challenge our working modes, especially the painful parts. We do not want to challenge things which are happy. It's okay. But let us start with the painful parts which are causing us pain in our life, and things start changing. Here it's worth noting because one practical thing we have to talk about. See, Western religions or Western life is supposed to be built on guilt. The aid they give this, that to Africa or India or this or third world countries because they feel guilty for having suppressed them for long. While Eastern people, we are built on shame. When he says Nach ke illa, it becomes a very big issue for us and we start moving. So they are guilt driven and we are shame driven. And these are emotions which encourage us to hide our truth. When you think something is shameful, we try to hide that. Our narrative changes. I could have helped that person at that moment. I didn't. I feel ashamed about it. I was a doctor who could have done something there, but I didn't. So that shame shapes my narratives. I give a reason. No, it was not possible. I didn't have my kit. He was going to hospital anyway. Other people were carrying this, that, whatever. But we are shame driven, and this causes a false narrative. Mental health professionals work on the narratives which we provide, and they assist our self-discovery. So self-awareness, other than the ego, depends on knowing our narrative. C, keeping the mind firmly in here and now and avoiding its travels into the past of memories and the future of imagination is a thing which Eckhart Tolle advocates. His formula is use the power of now to navigate from the small self to the big self. Just being in the now does that. D, the relentless pursuit of one question, like Ramana Maharshi's Who Am I? The intellectual questioning of J. Krishnamurti, U.G. Krishnamurti, including the koans of Zen, push the limits of the mind to exhaustion. They break its hold, therefore the ego's hold on the small self, and this breaks the wheel of the Karana Sharira. This is the Jnana Marga, where you are pursuing any question. And it has to be one question because any question can, but it has to be pursued to a relentless end. Bhakti Marga, that is E, is exemplified by Mirabai, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Saint Ignatius of Assisi, Jalaluddin Rumi, Bhakta Ramdas, Shishunal Sharif, and so many. Theirs was a single-minded pursuit, bhakti, which was again unconditional faith. And it contained acceptance, surrender, love, faith, patience, everything bundled into one. It created a fierce passion, which we find it very difficult to understand, yet produced results for them. In fact, there was a method in their madness. The method was very simple. Just go ahead with life and do what you have to do. It seems when Rama and with Sita and Lakshmana crossed over the river when he was going for his Aranyavasa, wanted to pay the boatman for helping him cross. The boatman, being a very wise person, said, I want payment in kind, not in cash. I helped you to cross this thing. When I have to cross the Bhavasagara, the ocean of life, and move out to capital self, I want you to help me like I helped you now. So that was really a very wise thing. We have to surrender, accept, and do that, and that is exemplified in that. Karma Marga. Now we have seen Jnana Marga, Bhakti Marga, Karma Marga. It seems human birth or Mano Janma is the ultimate. It is considered as the last step in the evolution of the soul before it merges with the capital self. All that one has to do is lead a life that comes his or her way, and you are guaranteed merging with the universal soul on death. Then why all this circus? Just live and do your best. It seems like that. There's a very bold poem by the Sufi mystic, quoted Jalaluddin Rumi earlier. It's worth listening to. He says, you are born with potential. You are born with goodness and trust. You are born with ideals and dreams. You are born with greatness. You are born with wings. You are not meant to be crawling, so don't. You have wings, so learn to use them and fly. Now, this is something very powerful because unless we think we can do that, we can fly, we can reach the other end, there's no limit to it, it's possible, we are not likely to. Finally, it's also a strong human belief that in spite of all effort, there is something called grace that has to descend on us from God or the universal spirit to enlighten us. Also, like all spiritual truths that are paradoxical, grace is showered on all of us equally. Just like rain falls, ellar melo ade male birodu, whether papi or sinner or whoever it is. So we need to be prepared, that's all. As the saying goes, fortune favors the well prepared. So all that we have to do, body, mind, and soul, is to just keep on preparing us, allow that grace to function. And this is the way to break the wheel, the Karana Sharira, to be able to merge with the soul or the universal soul. I have come to an end, and it becomes irresistible for me to go without giving a Mullah Nasruddin story. So here is it. It seems Mullah Nasruddin was asked, when he reached heaven, how did you reach? He says, it's all life's fortunes and misfortunes which brought me here. So he was asked, what fortunes and misfortunes? So he said, it seems there was a lottery in his town as to who will be able to accompany the test pilot in the new. Recently, some Hawk and this and that were done. Atmanirbhar thing, we had got planes, no? So in one of those lottery, he got a chance to fly in that plane. He says, I was fortunate to win that lottery and get a place. Unfortunately, the plane developed problems. So he says, fortunately, there was a spare parachute in the plane other than the pilots, and he could wear it and jump out. Unfortunately, the parachute didn't open. But fortunately, there was a huge haystack below. Unfortunately, in the haystack was one pitchfork, which was standing with its prongs up. Fortunately, he said he missed the pitchfork. Unfortunately, he said he missed the haystack too. But fortunately, he was desperately praying all along when he was coming down to earth. And he says, that's how I reached heaven. Which means ultimately accepting, knowing, and being with that universal self is the method through all our fortunes and misfortunes to be able to achieve it. I'll stop here. Questions? Any other additions? Because there was very little interaction earlier. I would like all that. In a way, I have rounded up, but I'll do that again. So I think I've come to the end of time also, isn't it?
We have time, sir. So if there are any questions, people may unmute and ask or type in the chat window. Either way is fine. So there is one question by Dr. Venkatachalapati on the chat. Is yogis control
The
Karana Sharira?
Yes, yes.
Yogis control the Karana Sharira.
No, it's knowing the Karana Sharira, the directions it provides, and following that, you can achieve whatever going over. But controlling, I am not too sure. Yoga, you can control your body. I have seen in Bangalore only, in that this thing, town hall, where Swami Rama's, when I was in college, he could heat up one half of his body and he's sweating. The other half of his body was ice cold. We could, as audience, we could go and touch him and see what is there. I mean, that is absolute physical control through yoga. I'm sure mental control also would be there, but I don't know about Karana Sharira. Karana Sharira is what we have come with or what is our backlog. So when we are able to control this, I suppose we can control that also. Really, if you got an answer, please do it, sir. Please give it.
Sir, if we may just add to what
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Looking at the three bodies, Sthula,
Master.
Karana, the gross cannot control the subtle. The subtle can control the gross. So if you look at it that way, Karana Sharira can control the mind and body. The reverse is not possible. Karana's Sharira is a superset of the Sukshma Sharira and Sthula Sharira. So mind can control the body. Body cannot actually control the mind.
It influences only.
Influences, there is a mutual interaction in mutual relationship, but the control and the power rests in the superset, not in the subset.
Okay. Yeah.
That is just a thought I had that I may just...
No, that's appears right. Yeah.
That is true, sir.
Hmm.
Body cannot control the mind.
Yeah.
But the mind can control the body.
Yes.
So if there are any other questions, please share, because Dr. Thakur gives a lot of scope for interaction. Please use this opportunity to share.
Shiv Kumar has raised a hand. Yes.
Namaste, sir.
Yes. Namaste.
It
Namaste.
was wonderful listening.
Yeah.
Can you speak up, Sir Shiv Kumar?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me now? Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry. Sir, it was wonderful listening to you.
Uh,
Many of the facts that you gave, though it is there in the scriptures, you have presented it in a very easy to understand manner. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Is it correct to ask? I do not know, but would your talk be available in a PDF for us to refer again and again? Thank you.
have it. I can send it to Vani or Vasu. Yeah.
I would request them to share. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
A few days will be uploaded. So you could.
Sorry, the voice was breaking.
In a few days,
Yeah.
the recording of this talk will be uploaded on the YouTube, and a link is in the WhatsApp to access the channel.
Breaking.
No. See, please mute after asking the question. Otherwise, there will be echo.
Yeah, there's a lot of echoing going on.
Yeah, that is because people have to mute after asking the question. If multiple microphones are on, it will echo. Okay. So at the end of this 7-day festival, together we will upload the video talks of all the invited speakers on YouTube, as we have been doing in the past for the regular Monday and Tuesday talks. You may refer to them. There will be a playlist called the Festival of Awareness. Under that, we will upload all the video talks on YouTube. Okay. For those of you who would like the alert, please subscribe to the channel, Meditation and Study Circle YouTube channel. You will automatically get the alert. Subscription here doesn't mean there is any money. It's a YouTube subscribing to the channel. You will get alert whenever talks are uploaded. Thank you so much. If you need additional information, please send a WhatsApp to Vani at 96633 29799.
We'll type the number on chat. So
At the end, 96633 29799. So you can refer to Dr. Tekur's talk and all other talks on YouTube when it gets uploaded.
we can go back to questions and sharing now.
Shall I ask, Ma?
Please.
Sir Thakur sir, namaskara. I just want to know that how the Sukshma Sharira reacts in the stage of dream conditions.
Sukshma Sharira or the mind is operating right through, because as I told you, the unconscious mind is running all your heart, this thing, other things, lungs, digestion, all the sort of functions. It is keeping you alive and running those. Along with that, the information which you have got throughout the day and past information is being collected and sorted out. It's like a post office. In the night when you are sleeping, there are thousands of images which have come into your mind and they are being sorted out. So the unconscious mind does this in the night when you are sleeping and not loading it with conscious images. And at that time, when you get up or you become aware of it, you realize I am dreaming and this is some dream. The example I give is, so you are going in an aeroplane, that suddenly becomes a snake, that becomes a bus or something, and suddenly you realize you are not in a plane, you are in a bus. Then without your knowing, you are walking. And there is no direct connection where you got down from the bus or plane and walk. It is as though it's happening. It's because those images which are coming one after another are being sorted out by the mind. It's used in psychology to connect to what you have in mind, the associations which you have. So it is a sorting out process which you become aware of. That's all.
Sometimes the dreams we are getting, no, it is irrelevant, it's not related to in our life, but we get the dreams.
In this, I had said one of those things, sir, that narrative which we have a narrative which our mind works on. And the Karana Sharira tries to give us hints that this narrative is not okay, or this narrative will get you into problems. I'm feeling very, up and about, and, I feel very happy or proud or this things like that. In your dream, you get that, hey, you fellow, you're going to slip on the banana peel and you're going to fall. Don't behave like this. So, like that, these are subtle images and things which come from the Karana Sharira. There is a feedback from the Karana Sharira into Sukshma Sharira, and sorting out of Sukshma Sharira material is being done in the night. These are all sources of dreams. So it is only the individual can interpret it. It is very difficult for others to do so.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, please? We have another 4 minutes for question answers interaction. Does anyone else would like?
Dr. Thakur, good evening.
Yes.
Could you please tell us as to what's the difference between mystical and spiritual experience?
I think they mean the same thing. What you would call a mystic is one whose experience doesn't follow logic, formal logic. And spiritual experience is also the same. So they call it mystical because it remains a mystery. It is like a mystery. While the spiritual thing is definite relationship to the universal soul or God. You get a message from somebody, and you can call it a mystical experience if it is helping you in some way. You can call it a spiritual experience if it is directing you in the correct direction. So they almost mean the same. The words they use are different. If you want an example, I can give you. A spiritual experience is when you are doing sadhana or something, you feel. Spiritual experience is more of feeling, etc., with that experience. A mystical experience, on the other hand, is something which is unexpected even by you, has no connection to anything, like these dreams which you was talking about. It is only on reflection and review of that you understand, oh, there was something beyond the mind which was operating. And it was something which was operating from the universe, maybe at a physical level, maybe at whatever level. So, in a way, it is a spiritual experience which you experience in retrospect. In retrospect, it's mystical. But a direct spiritual experience is as it's going on, you're fully, in that joy. They say enjoy, you're in joy, in that bliss. So this is the difference I am aware of. If there's anything else, please share, sir. Or anyone else. They almost mean the same.
Dr. Sir, namaste.
Namaste.
You have mentioned that Westerns are guilt-driven people and Eastern people are shame-driven people.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate that? Why they are guilty and why we are shame?
No. Actually, I took this from, you have heard of Romila Thapar. She's a great historian, Indian historian, who classifies people of the world in many ways. And she talks about how the West, because of its culture and because of its way of looking at, like I told you, the difference between Semitic religions and Indic religions, like that, they are people who are driven by guilt. One example I gave is many of the actions which they do, whether helping poorer nations or third world or this or that, or even going to war, is all guilt because they feel guilty about something wrong. While whatever we do it out of shame when we are shamed. That can't you do this? Can't you join this? Can't you help somebody? Hey, Nimo is like your whatever younger brother, I say, and why don't you help him? So when we are shamed into it, we do it. So it is a negative mental feeling which drives many of the actions which we do. The second thing is when it is guilt driven, it is more of materialistic or iha. Shame driven is more para. You're relating yourself to something bigger in shame. While in guilt, it is like a transaction. I had a transaction with you. A 20 rupee thing, I sold it to you for 25. I feel guilty. But shame is, I should not have done this to somebody who trusted me. That is a higher, it's a emotional thing. It is a higher thing. You cannot, do something wrong to a person who trusted you. It's like the child who trusted you, you are taking away the ice cream from its hands. So shame is related to a higher value compared to guilt. These are my understandings. Welcome to question them. Look at your own way of looking at it. I'm just sharing what I understand, sir. So please, I might be wrong, or according to you, it might be different. Yeah.
No, it is correct, sir. In that sense, it is okay. But the present ongoing transaction and all, no, if that you connected to that, maybe it is, we have a different opinion. The explanation what you have given now, it's okay, because guilt is out of something and then shame is higher than that. That is okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
In that part, it's correct. Okay.
Okay, sir. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. I think
Thank you.
there is no doubt that we had a wonderful session today. Dr. Tekur took us through the two self model, the lower self and the higher self, and the bridge between the two, which is the mind, to reach a model that is very useful for sadhana through various anecdotes and other things, talking about experiences and also getting into religion and spirituality. There was a lot of interaction towards the end, clarifying all the doubts and questions. So for this beautiful, wonderful session, we would offer our heartful thanks and namaskars, appreciation to Dr. Tekur and our Pushpa Vrishti clap, angels showering blossoms upon the enlightened. We must not forget the guest of honor for today, Dr. Subramanya, who came and shared with us his interactions with the founders, Sri Krishnamurti and Srimati Rukmini Krishnamurti, being a very close member of the family, sister and brother-in-law, a lot of interesting anecdotes and interesting incidents. So to him, we offer our heartful thanks, namaskars, and also Pushpa Vrishti clap. We would request Dr. Tekur to conduct a brief session on Here and Now after the announcement for tomorrow, so that it becomes complete, because as he said, the only thing available for us at any point of time is the here and now that connects the gross with the subtle, that provides a conduit between the gross and the subtle. So tomorrow's program, the day 4, is will be handled by me. The title of the talk is Clean Slate. Clean Slate is the title under the theme the self-awareness, Festival of Self-Awareness. And tomorrow's guest of honor is another long-time associate of Meditation and Study Circle, Sri Guru Prasad, who has been a very good long-time member, attending the satsangs from a very, very long time, and also doing a lot of volunteering in the physical satsangs. So we cordially and warmly welcome you to tomorrow's session as well, along with your family and friends. I would request Dr. Tekurji to conduct the here and now meditation. And then after that, we will end with the Shanti Mantra.
Okay, so shall we settle for that?